So I've been doing YouTube devlogs for a little over a month now, and I suddenly realized that I've actually been doing it for almost 10 years, but while working in the professional games industry. And not only that, but I realized that every single company does this. Why? You know, what do they actually show in these devlogs? What are they communicating? How do they look? I want to explain that, and I'll do you one better. I'm gonna show you how I did it when I worked in the professional industry for the last 10 years. But before we start any of that, I want to kind of lay a ground base of knowledge of what is an actual devlog. In essence, a devlog is a way to talk to your audience, right? Give them an update on what's going on, how things are going, if anything changed, are you on schedule, are you not, what happened, was it fun, did it suck, things like that. It's a tool to inform. Overall, most devlogs are a bit on a spectrum. Either they are very informative or they are very entertaining, and there's a whole slew in between there. When making these more professional forms of devlogs, I was of course more on the informative side instead of more on the entertaining side. And there's not really a one-size-fits-all solution, because in general, it depends on what you want from your devlog. Let's say you are interested in creating games, but also helping others create them. Then it's probably a really good idea to make your devlogs as informative as possible in the hope of maybe working with some of these people that you want to help out or becoming part of their team. Whereas if you're interested in making games and also kind of selling them or making your own game for a public audience, there is a good chance that creating a more entertaining devlog will at least reach an audience that is more willing to play your game. The more entertaining your devlog is, the higher the chances that you actually reach an audience of gamers, which will eventually play your games. In general, when looking at these more professional devlogs, your audience is often founders, directors, leads, things along those lines. And there's even one really important audience member that often people forget, but I'll get to that later. And that this is your audience doesn't mean that your devlog is like only informative. In essence, you still want it to be somewhat entertaining, because if you just do some dry kind of explanation of what has been happening, often people don't really remember what you were talking about in the first place. This whole fact of keeping your audience entertained and engaged is a true fact for any form of information that you want to get across, especially when you do it in a form like this. But again, the main purpose of these professional devlogs is that they're informative. And you're definitely wondering now, like, how do they look then? I swear I'll get to that. But I first want to touch a bit more on the YouTube thing, because I feel like this spectrum that I talked about is often the reason why there's so much debate about devlogs in general. Why should you waste time on this? Why should you just not focus on your game? Devlogs are only for other developers. There's a whole slew of arguments for and against creating devlogs, but I think most people don't understand that devlogs are an integral. But I think that most people don't understand that devlogs are a crucial part of game development. As I said, they do it in every single game company, so there must be some sort of value to it, even if you think there's not. As I said, it's a matter of goal. Who do you want to reach? And with that information of who you want to reach, how should your devlogs or updates look? And in the end, no matter what the goal or how your company looks, be it just you, be it a big AAA, whatever the hell, you're gonna need to give some sort of updates, so why not just post them? And the reason why I've been doing it, and more people in companies have been doing it, is because I'm a producer. And a part of being a producer in video games, or at least a part of the skill that you need to develop, is a thing called stakeholder management. And to kind of clarify that buzzword a little bit, in essence, anyone that is part of the game's production or the end result is a stakeholder. So this is, I don't know, the artists, the people giving you money, the marketing team, your team, and the most important one, which is part of that audience that I talked about, like the most important audience member. And this stakeholder often gets somewhat forgotten, and it's really weird because it's the stakeholder that's the most important, and it separates a good producer from a bad producer. And that stakeholder is the player. The player is the biggest stakeholder in the game. If the player doesn't want to play the game, you're screwed, right? There's no reason to spend money on all these cool updates if no one's interested in it. And what this means is that your key stakeholder, the most important person to talk to in your devlogs or status updates, is your player. You know, what did you do to align with the player and the company's goals? How did you try to achieve things that would bring value to both? And if you have to keep your player in mind during these updates, why not just share it with them? And there's also a very good counter argument to that, which ties back into the whole debate of should you make devlogs, yes or no. Devlogs in professional environments do not look like this. Even this is bare bones for a devlog on YouTube, but it's still a lot better than what you will see in a professional environment. Because most of the time, in a professional environment, these are not very well edited videos, but they're slides. They're a slide deck that is hopefully somewhat entertaining in order to bring the information across correctly. However, the essence is the same, right? You have an audience and you want to be as informative to this audience as possible. And keeping it light and entertaining is actually a tool you can use to ensure that the information comes across. This means that even though they might be just slides, they can still be somewhat entertaining and fun to watch as a tool to ensure that everyone pays attention. Oh, hey, sorry to butt in here. I just wanted to say, if you like what you're seeing so far, please consider subscribing, leaving a like. It helps me out a ton. I hope you're liking the video, and that's all. I'll leave you to it. Thank you. Now, before I give you an example of how I would do this in a professional setting, there's often kind of two different development types that are out there. There's more, but there's like two broad ones. There's either a game that still has to be developed and is yet to be released, where most of the time people talk about milestones and, you know, how much progress we made, etc., etc. Or there are the games that are already live with updates going out to players over and over again, like Fortnite or League of Legends, where most of the times these curated updates or these professional devlogs are more about what type of impact the updates had on players, looking very much into the data, and then on top of that, explaining how far we are with future updates or things like that. So I'm either talking about progression towards milestones, or I'm talking about impact on players, depending on the type of game I'm working on. Now, for the example, to ensure I don't break any NDAs, I'm going to talk about a progress update. And the update I'm going to talk about is going to be my own game, the incremental horror life simulator thing that I'm still kind of working on in the background. Now, I'm taking this as serious as possible. The way that I will present this slide deck would be the same as I would do in any company. Even though it might look like overly entertaining or very memeable, in the end, again, entertaining is a tool in order to make people remember what you're saying. And I use this quite a bit. My slide decks look like absolute ass, but I tend to add some memeage or whatever in there to just keep everyone on their toes and awake. Because just talking and showing numbers and telling how good it is often not really good for ingraining information into someone's brain. Hi everyone, welcome to the development update of the Talentless Studio. As you can see, I can't really make good slides, so we're gonna have to do with ugly slides and memes. The current goal that we wanted to achieve is to get the core loop done by the end of the year. In addition to that, we wanted to ensure that the main day systems and kind of the night loop was completely done, including the horror elements that we planned. As a stretch goal, we wanted to get an initial demo out to the public. Now the question is, how did we do, right? Well, I want to clarify kind of where we are on the whole spectrum of getting this done. So we wanted to create the basic foundation, so core gameplay, or at least the core systems that would allow us to create the core gameplay. In addition to that, we wanted to finalize the core loop, and this would bring us to the first milestone, being a playable demo. I think we're about 65% of the way there, which in the month of December is not a very pretty sign. I want to start on the positive notes though. Like, what do we actually have? Well, we have the basic day cycle. We have all the things that we wanted to add there, as in we have hunger, we have stress, we have hygiene, we have money, you can work, you can sleep. There's still a few bugs in there, like an especially very difficult highlight bug, but all in all, it's going pretty well. In addition to that, we have the start of the night cycle. The night cycle allows you now to look around, kind of, you know, in a first-person camera, and count the sheep by looking at them and clicking and making it jump. And that's the extent of what the night cycle looks like at the moment. So what's currently in progress then and stopping us from reaching our milestone? Well, it's the horror system. We're still hard at work at the horror system in general. It needs quite a lot of differences and changes, like more than we originally anticipated. It's a complex system, but we are making serious progress. Now, if we then look at the traffic lights, like the way that I normally try to tell you guys like where we are on the grand scheme of things, if we look at the red light, it means we are far behind and we probably need to pivot. An amber light is we are close to our goal, but we have to either cut something or delay. And a green light is we are actually on schedule, which, as we all know, is a myth and never happens. Now, if you look at the whole spectrum of it, we're kind of there. You know, we are not in red yet. We are definitely inkling towards it, which is really important to note, and we should keep ourselves accountable. But we are still in amber right now. It is, of course, a big oof, right? Like, we definitely want it to be somewhere else, but there's a multitude of reasons of why we got here. Because initially, we are working with a junior team, so estimations are overall optimistic. The team consists of me, myself, and I know very little about anything. This means that even though I can produce my way through this, things like coding and art and, you know, having to learn everything from scratch is just giving us delays that we originally didn't anticipate. December is also not a real month. Like, we try to act like it is, but it is not. Most of the people are off. There's other things happening. There's holidays. People take off for half of the December. People take up all their paid off days during December. You know, December, I count it as a full month, but in essence, it's like a third of a month. We're also working pro bono, so priority shift. I don't get paid for any of this, and I'm the whole team. And because of that, it's going to be hard to always be motivated and ensure that we reach our deadlines. I also feel like I could have been chasing myself a little more, you know, in terms of the deadlines, in terms of, you know, trying to reach what we wanted to reach a little tighter, which unfortunately I didn't do. So I think that that's something that we can definitely grow in. Other improvements, so future improvements, are that we should start tracking the work a little better and ensure that we create enough time for education. I cannot do everything right away. I need to plan in some time of like, okay, I need to figure out how this works. Then I need to fill it 15 times and then I can make it. Also, maybe we should prioritize YouTube a little less and the game a little more. I like doing these YouTube things, but they are definitely delaying the game as we speak, as I try to keep up the weekly cadence. Also, maybe we should scope down the horror system a bit more. It seems quite complex and probably doesn't need the amount of complexity I've inputted right now. We can always expand it later, right? So it might be good to ensure that we just kind of are able to ship something instead of trying to overcomplicate systems because it's fun to do. In terms of next steps, we can either start cutting things or we can start delaying things, seeing as the only thing we can cut right now is the horror part and that one of the genre definitions is a horror game. We can't really cut it. So my advice at the moment is that we delay the initial milestone to 2025, preferably Q1. It's not either Q1 or Q2, but preferably Q1. If there's any questions, please leave them in the comments, and now we go back. And that is in general what a professional devlog looks like. Now the cool thing that I want to hammer home here is that regardless of if you present this to actual people or if you just do this for yourself, it is a very powerful tool to keep yourself accountable and to ensure you stay in a certain cadence. Doing these types of process updates, or, you know, devlogs as I call them now, it creates a way for you to either talk to your audience or to yourself and check how are we doing, what were we planning on doing, and how far did we get, what went wrong, what went right. It's like a small post-mortem to try and understand how we're doing in the grand scheme of things. Creating a game takes long, so you're gonna forget about where you were trying to go and if you actually reached your deadlines, yes or no. And this is why I think that for everyone, creating devlogs is mega important. Even if you don't share them with the world, at least sharing them with yourself will ensure that you stay on schedule as much as you can. Now, if you would like to see a more entertaining version of this, I actually have a devlog series. Consider having a look. If you're interested in any type of this, see how I'm developing my game with very little talent and very little expertise in anything but producing. If not, I hope I was at least able to give you some sort of insight into devlogs for professionals. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. Cheers.